This episode is sponsored by the Expert Services Directory. Are you a coach, consultant, speaker, or trainer who wants to sell your services to corporate clients across the UK, but you're booking fewer than 5 qualified sales calls from your lead generation each month? Or finding that all of your inbound inquiries are coming from junior employees in firms who just want to benchmark your pricing rather than actually introduce you to the real decision maker who has the buying power to get you in? And you really want to generate real qualified inbound inquiries from decision makers in organisations around the UK who actually have buying power and want to purchase your services as an external supplier? Well, that is exactly what the Expert Services Directory is for. And if you visit www.expertservicesdirectory.com and sign up now, you can generate qualified corporate leads for 12 whole months by being part of the Expert Services Directory, where we proactively market specialist providers just like you to real decision makers in companies across the UK who are ready to buy from external suppliers. And if you use the code podcast at checkout, all caps, you'll also get a free corporate priorities calendar that you can use to understand exactly what decision makers are prioritizing at each point in the year so that you can create solutions that sell all year round as well. All you have to do is visit www.expertservicesdirectory.com and enter the code podcast, all in capital letters, at the checkout now. Right, let's get back to the episode. Welcome to the Selling to Corporate podcast, where we're going to be challenging your sales beliefs around selling to corporate organizations and help you increase your bottom line profits every single month. I am Jessica Lorimer, your sales expert and guide in this world of selling to corporate companies, skyrocketing your company sales and making the impact that you really want in the world. Now, don't forget, if you do enjoy the show today, please do head over to iTunes and leave us a review. But enjoy this episode, and I am really looking forward to sharing some epic sales wisdom with you. Hello, and we are racing towards Easter. I don't know what anyone else is doing, but we have booked a little trip away. I say little trip because it is a little trip to see some vineyards in France, which I'm very, very excited about for a number of reasons. One is that we don't have to fly there. Love the Eurostar and hate to fly. And two is because when I was in corporate, one of the really good habits that they drilled into us was taking regular time off. And by regular, the companies that I worked with, because they would run salespeople so hard, would encourage us to take time off every quarter because they felt that working solidly for 3 months, and in sales you work in this crazy 90-day sprint. And at the end of the quarter, there's this huge amount of pressure around bringing in and billing to the target and exceeding the target that companies have set, that they recognize actually you need a bit of a break. And that's something I've really tried to keep in my own business, is this idea of having definite decompression time where I'm just not working and not thinking about work. And Christmas, I don't know about anyone else, but Christmas feels pretty far away. It's been a busy start to the year. I've been working really, really hard on, it sounds silly, but thinking work. So there have been lots of changes that we've been making behind the scenes as we evolve here at Selling to Corporate and as I make changes to the business and to the strategy and things. So it's been a lot of brain work, which actually feels a lot harder for me and more intensive than sales because that's what I love to do. So I am very excited to get to April and have a little trip to the vineyards and see just over Easter and see what creative things I could cook up there. But speaking of all of the epic things that I've been able to do in March, I think it's also important to touch on what a busy time this is for everybody. And by everybody, I mean you, I mean me, and I mean decision makers in organisations, and I also mean employees inside organisations as well. And that's one of the things I want to talk about today, because what we see in March is this really interesting time of the year where decision makers in organizations in sort of December, January have sat down and thought about and finalized their plans for the year as a whole. So in December, 2025, they're talking about what are we going to do? What's the strategy going to look like? And in January, they're going, right, this is it. This is what we're doing. This is what we're working towards. And so it becomes this really busy first quarter of the calendar year because motivation is really strong. It's really high. And you might have found that with your own New Year's goals. Obviously, I don't really set them, so New Year's resolutions, but some people go all out and they, January the 1st is that day, that first day of the rest of their lives. And that's kind of what organizations do, but every single year. And it means that this first quarter then is quite busy, for a couple of reasons. One is that motivation is really high. Two is that for most organizations, particularly in the UK, end of year budget will be being used up. So most companies in the UK will end their financial year on March 31st, which means that they are trying to spend what they have, otherwise they'll lose it. And then their new budget is reset in April. So from a financial perspective, it's a great time for them to be using up money on external suppliers and talking to external suppliers to get things in the next financial year's budget. So from their perspective, it's a good time to get things in. It's a good time to start delivery because of that motivation piece, because of that budget being accessible. But that also has that knock-on impact on people like you and me who are selling to companies, because it means that it's a busy time for your sales process, or it should be. And it's also a busy time for your delivery, because you're having to juggle that high level of motivation and need for delivery now before summer kicks in, because I know that we think that's really far away, but it isn't. And also having to navigate our sales activity to create that pipeline that is going to see us through until June. And that can be tricky to manage from a time perspective and also from an overwhelm perspective. And that's really what today's episode is about, is how can we use one simple sales technique that I've used for the last 18 years to actually make sure that I navigate all of these busy periods of delivery and of sales and of the two combined to consistently produce the results I want. And that's what I want to share with you, because it absolutely can happen. I think that there are some reasons that scupper people a little bit. And so that's what we're going to talk through. But I did mention earlier, this should be a busy time for your sales process, and you should be making conversations with corporates happen now. And if you're not, then it would be a good time for you to get yourself a spot inside the Expert Services Directory, which incidentally sponsors this episode of the Selling to Corporate podcast. And as you'll know, the Expert Services Directory is the place for coaches, consultants, experts, trainers, and speakers to generate inbound leads from corporate organizations, specifically around the UK. So it is not an international entity. It is specifically for you if you are a coach, a consultant, an expert, a speaker or trainer, or even a done-for-you service provider who is looking to sell to organizations in the UK. And the Expert Services Directory gives you a listing on the directory itself, which means that you are eminently searchable on things like your favorite OpenAI platforms, which I've seen recently have taken a real turn. So thank you very much for ethics. We support that. But it also proactively markets your category out in a commercial way to organizations around the UK from my personal database, also the huge database that we've been building over the last 6 months, specifically for organizations in the UK and decision makers around those organizations who have control of budget, who have autonomy over sign off, and who can actually get you into companies that you really want to work with. So if you haven't checked out the Expert Services Directory yet, please do. Link is in the show notes. And if you use the code podcast, all in caps at the checkout, you'll get an extra special free gift as well for being a listener of Selling to Corporate. So it's a win-win. All right. So whilst I've been busy and everybody else has been busy, I've had a lot of questions from people at my Converting Corporates event, from professional salespeople that I've been working with, from my one-to-one clients in the boardroom, from people in the C-suite, and from basically everywhere, which is always, how do you get everything done? And I think it's a really interesting question because, one, it means that people assume that I'm busy, which work is always busy, which is great. But I, as a person, am probably not as busy as most people think. But also, it means that people are often feeling quite overwhelmed by their own sales process, and particularly how they manage that with delivery. And so I have been sharing this technique that I'm going to share with you today, and also caveating it with, it only works if you think about a couple of other things. So the technique itself is actually really simple. It'll take you less than an hour a day, which I know sounds like a real hype. Um, Here I am hyping something instead of saying, oh my gosh, but it'll only work for you if you do these things too, which I realize I say a lot on the podcast, but not for this. It is a really simple technique. But I will caveat it with, there are other components that are important around it. It's not enough to just use this one technique. Okay. So let's talk about the things that can stop your sales pipeline progressing when you're in a busy period. What I mean by that is that we can all be busy with our businesses. We can all be in high periods of delivery where we are working on big projects for clients, where we are having multiple meetings with clients, where we are prepping for delivery or prepping for training that we might be doing. The problem is, or the problem I see, is that when that happens, a lot of people think about, well, I'm just going to focus all in on this delivery, and then I'm going to do business development when I have the energy. That is really difficult because, unfortunately, if you are in that pattern, and you'll recognize it instantly if you are, when that happens, you operate in this feast-famine cycle because your business has to. Because what happens is you work like a Trojan on your sales activities. So you end up having lots of sales conversations, generating lots of proposals, generating lots of revenue, generating lots of delivery. And then you end up in this period where you're too busy, or you feel like you're too busy and too overwhelmed to manage that delivery at that level alongside your sales activity, or the sales activity needed to create your pipeline for the next few months. So what happens is you focus all in on delivery, give the client a great experience, and then wake up one day and realize you have no revenue, or you have very little revenue because you haven't done any sales activity. And then that activity, or that panic, sets in, and you repeat the cycle again. You do loads and loads of sales activity, get loads of clients, get loads of delivery, get really overwhelmed, don't do any sales activity, don't get any more pipeline, finish up with clients, no work, no revenue, again and again and again. And that in itself is actually really difficult for people. It's difficult mentally. It can be really difficult from a sales mindset because once you start seeing your pipeline decrease, it can be really demotivating and disheartening. And it can also make it really difficult to get back on the horse and start doing sales activities again, because you get all those, oh gosh, well, if I was really good, then I'd be getting loads of inbound leads and clients would just come to me and I wouldn't have to do anything. And all these thoughts come up. So if you've been there, or if you are there, get it, and it happens to lots of people. It really does. But there are reasons that it happens. So one of the biggest reasons that this happens and that people get into this cycle is actually a practical one. They don't price their offers and solutions correctly. And by that, I don't mean this daft, 1980s attitude of, if it ends in a 7, it's more likely to sell, or if you price it at 19.99, then it'll definitely sound better than the round number of 20 or whatever number you're using. This isn't psychobabble. I don't know whether that's an offensive term in the psychology world, and if it is, I apologize, but I just mean it's not reality. What I mean by people pricing properly is actually understanding the practicalities of what is going into their solutions, what needs to be delivered, what their profit margins are, and whether they're actually pricing enough to not get into overwhelm with their delivery. And most people aren't. Most people are going in with prices that they've just picked out the air with no commercial business case behind them whatsoever. They've just gone, I feel really good right now, so I'm going to charge a really high number, or I haven't signed any clients in a while, so I'm going to charge a low number. And then they're either semi-happy or semi-resentful of whatever they ended up charging because it was either just enough or not enough or maybe a bit more than enough. And, we fall into these pricing patterns. So if you are somebody who often thinks, actually, I'm always in this feast famine cycle where I'm so busy with delivery, I don't have time to do sales activity, maybe take a look at pricing. It's quite likely that something needs to change there, because if it doesn't, you're always going to be in that cycle, right? It indicates that you're charging too low an amount, or amounts that are too low to actually justify the amount of time that is being spent per client on them, because you're eating into your own sales activity. And your job in your business, your primary focus, is to be the salesperson in your business. Because if you're not, you don't have a business. You have a really, really expensive hobby. Okay? So if you are in that feast famine cycle all the time, then look at your pricing. Is that a practical reason that you are struggling? The second thing is to stop forgetting what your job in your business is. And I've just talked about it there. Your job in your business, your primary job and occupation and job description is to be a salesperson. I know that everybody gets into their business because they want to create impact. They want to do what they love. They have a passion. They might have a really powerful story around why they've moved into running their own business. But if you don't do the right sales activity, or you don't do enough sales activity, or you just don't know what you're doing with sales activity and therefore don't make it effective, you're failing your business because you're not going to create the impact that you want, because you're not getting into enough rooms. And I think that this is really difficult because sometimes we can fall into justifying here, and that justification around, well, I'm making impact because I'm showing up on social media and I'm getting lots of engagement, or I'm getting lots of likes, or, people are really resonating with what I say. And that's all well and good. But your bank account manager, like mine, probably wants to be paid in, your local currency, not in how much the LinkedIn algorithm likes your content. And that's difficult. I think that we all do it. I've done it over the years. Everyone's done it. I think we can all start to justify when our business isn't where we want it to be, why it isn't. Oh, well, it's just that the market isn't great right now. Oh, well, it's just that it's going to take more time than I expected. Oh, I just need to create more content. Oh, it's just because decision makers don't understand what I do. Oh, it's just because the companies need more education. It's just. Actually, it is just that you are not prioritizing your job as a salesperson inside your business. And that's where this technique comes along. Because for most people, what ends up happening in their business is that they get to the end of the day, they get up, they spend their first 4 or 5 working hours of their day doing client stuff. They get up, they check their emails, they start responding, they've blocked out prep time for a masterclass that they're delivering. They're doing prep for a training. They're putting together just something extra for the client to give them extra learning or whatever it is. And then at the end of the day, they go, oh, I haven't done my sales activity. Or, wow, I'll do it tomorrow. So they put it off. Or they do it, but they've got so little energy at the end of the day that they sort of half do it. And so it's not their best work, but it's done, right? The activity has happened, so it's fine. Only it's not fine. When you show up day after day to do client delivery, but not build your business, but not actually prioritize sales activities, what you're doing is failing to build a sales muscle. And that means that you're not putting in the reps that are going to get you the initial result, so sales and building your pipeline, all that kind of stuff. But you're also not practicing sales skills so that you hone them efficiently and so that you can do them in the most effective way. And you're also not practicing them in a way that means that they become a habit rather than something you have to always overthink and worry about. Instead, they just feel normal. You just do them because you've practiced that skill. It feels comfortable now. And that's what a lot of people are not doing. They're not spending time on actually understanding the sales process and then practicing the skills involved. Instead, they're consuming more and more information about the one magic way to do something or this new way to objection handle, instead of actually ever putting down the theory and picking up the proverbial phone. And that's really difficult. And that's why this one technique works really well. And I call it 10 before 10. So if you're one of my clients, you'll have heard me bang on about this endlessly, but it's a good reminder. 10 before 10 is something that I did in corporate. And in corporate, I was working in recruitment. Recruitment is notoriously difficult because your candidates will call you all the time, whenever they want. Your clients will call you all the time, whenever they want. And so it can make it really, really difficult to field all of these different people, different processes happening, different things going on, and being really reactive. So what I did was focus the first hour of my day, every day, on sales activity. And I looked at it and I thought, if I can do 10 sales activities every day before 10 a.m., then my pipeline will always be building because I'm actively choosing to do sales activity first, which means I'm actively prioritizing my pipeline first thing in the morning. And it works really well. Now, if you don't know what comprises a sales activity, or you think it's just writing a post on any social media platform or, responding to an inquiry from your website or something, please email me. Please email me. I will refer you to back catalogue episodes of the podcast, and I can recommend resources and I can recommend activities that you might want to look at. But it is not good to sit there and say, oh, well, sales activity is just doing sales calls and I don't have any booked this week, so I guess I just can't do anything, right? Sales activities are things like, are you actively sending follow-ups? Are you doing outreach? Are you chasing outstanding invoices? Are you sending proposals or writing proposals that need to be sent? There are so many things that fall under sales activities that do not involve any social media platform or any content creation that you absolutely should be prioritizing each day. And it's one of the things that I will be talking more about in the newsletter. So again, if you haven't signed up to the newsletter, please make sure you do, because when you inevitably sit there in 6 months' time and be like, oh, I just mentioned this thing about sales activities, but what actually are they? It will be in your inbox. But 10 before 10 has genuinely been a game changer for me. Works really well. It focuses me first thing in the morning. It absolutely prioritizes my pipeline first. And some people have asked me, do I feel guilty about it? Do I feel guilty about not putting my clients first every day? And the answer is no. Because if I did that, if I put my clients first thing in the morning and answered their emails first and did everything that they needed first, I would be spending my time replying and being reactive, but I'd be spending my time worrying about when I was going to fit my sales activity in. Because although I want to always be great at delivery and provide the exact experience that we've promised we would provide to clients and the transformation that we've promised, I can't do that if I'm worrying that I'm not going to be able to pay my team in 3 months' time or 6 months' time. The activities that you do today really do, and I say it all the time, impact your business in 90 days' time. So if you've spent the first 90 days of this year doing not a lot with your sales activity, then that's fine. But you will be seeing the results of that right now. You'll be seeing the results of that into April and May and June if nothing changes. So if you are at the point where you're feeling like, actually, my business isn't balanced, maybe you've got a good amount of clients and you're generating a good amount of revenue, but you can never rest because you're always in delivery mode and then panicking about where the next sale's coming from. Or you're somebody who spends that time on that roller coaster of you're always either delivering or then having to hustle for more clients. You need to get that sorted because it is a recipe for A, hating your sales activity forever, and B, burning out, and actually not enjoying the business that you've spent so much time and energy to create. So make sure that you do go and get yourself signed up to the newsletter. I'll pop the link in the show notes for you where you can copy and paste it into your browser. Get yourself on the newsletter. We'll be talking much, much more about sales activities and things in there too. And like I say, if you haven't gone and checked out the Expert Services Directory yet, please make sure you do. It is a really good addition for those of you who are in delivery mode and know that you want inbound leads when you are really, really busy, but you don't have time to prioritize outreach yourself. It gives you something in the background that is doing outreach and is there to just take the weight off a little bit. All right, I will see you in the next episode.